Hello and welcome to the Minimum Competence episode for Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I'm your host for today, Andrew Leahy, a tax and technology attorney from New Jersey. On today's episode, we cover Trump's failed bid to delay sentencing in the hush money case, U.S. Steel suing over a blocked merger, and Congress certifying Trump's 2024 victory. Let's remember, the open texture of language is a central feature of law, leading to discretion in interpretation and application. And read today's legal news. On this day in legal history, January 7, 1959, the United States formally recognized the new Cuban government led by Fidel Castro. This recognition followed the Revolutionary Forces ousting of Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista earlier in January of 1959. The U.S. move reflected an initial acceptance of the political change in Cuba, as Batista's regime had become widely criticized for corruption and authoritarianism. Castro's rise to power was initially seen by some in the U.S. as a potential opportunity for reform and modernization in Cuba. However, underlying tensions between the two nations soon began to surface. As Castro consolidated power, his government initiated sweeping land reforms and began nationalizing industries, including those with significant American investments. These actions created friction with U.S. business interests and policymakers. By 1960, relations deteriorated further when Cuba aligned itself with the Soviet Union, entering the Cold War as a communist ally. The U.S. responded with economic sanctions, including a trade embargo, which severely strained diplomatic ties. The growing ideological divide culminated in January of 1961 when President Dwight D. Eisenhower severed formal diplomatic relations with Cuba. Shortly thereafter, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis deepened hostilities. The recognition on January 7th of 1959 marked the beginning of a complex and adversarial relationship that would define U.S.-Cuban interactions for decades. This movement remains a pivotal turning point in the history of both nations, highlighting the geopolitical struggles of the Cold War era. Former President Donald Trump has lost a bid to delay his sentencing in the Manhattan hush money case, despite his legal team's arguments citing presidential immunity and his upcoming January 20th inauguration. Judge Juan Merchan, who previously scheduled sentencing for January 10th, rejected the request, stating that Trump's motion repeated past arguments and emphasizing the need for finality in criminal proceedings. The judge noted he was not inclined to impose jail time, instead considering an unconditional discharge, which would mark a conviction without additional penalties. The case involves a $130,000 payment made by Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, to adult film actor Stormy Daniels to silence her claims of an affair with Trump before the 2016 election, a claim Trump still denies. Trump was found guilty in May of 2024 on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to concealing this payment. His lawyer's appeals to dismiss the case, including citing the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity for official acts, have been rejected as the charges pertain to Trump's personal conduct. Prosecutors argued against the delay, stressing the public interest in timely prosecution. This case marks the first time a U.S. president, sitting or former, has been convicted of a crime. Trump's legal team previously claimed that the case impedes his ability to govern, but the court maintained that upholding the jury's verdict is vital to the rule of law. U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel have filed lawsuits against President Joe Biden's administration over its decision to block Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion bid to acquire U.S. Steel, alleging the national security review process was politically influenced. The companies claimed Biden prejudged the outcome to gain political favor with the United Steelworkers Union ahead of the presidential election, violating their right to a fair review. They seek a federal court's intervention to overturn the decision and enable a new, impartial review. The merger was controversial, with both Biden and former President Donald Trump opposing the deal to keep U.S. Steel American-owned. Biden's administration cited national security concerns, while the companies argued the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., or CFI-US, failed to conduct a proper review. U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel also filed a separate lawsuit against rival Cleveland-Cliffs, its CEO, and the USW for allegedly colluding to block the deal and monopolize the domestic steel market. The lawsuits accused CFI-US staff of barring negotiations on a security agreement and alleged the review process was manipulated to align with Biden's predetermined opposition. Cleveland-Cliffs CEO Lourenco Goncalves and the USW deny the allegations, calling the lawsuits baseless. Despite Biden's decision, U.S. Steel stock rose as the company remains an attractive acquisition target amidst falling profits and revenues. Yesterday, Monday, January 6th, Congress officially certified Donald Trump's 2024 presidential election victory without objections, marking a stark contrast to the events of January 6th in 2021, when a mob stormed the Capitol to disrupt the certification of Joe Biden's victory. Kamala Harris, the outgoing vice president and Trump's defeated Democratic opponent, presided over the ceremony, emphasizing the sacred obligation of the peaceful transfer of power in American democracy. Security at the Capitol was unprecedented, with heavy fortifications, bomb squads, snipers, and reinforcements from law enforcement agencies across the country. However, the atmosphere outside was calm due to a massive snowstorm that emptied the streets of Washington, D.C. During the session, Harris received state certifications of electoral votes and announced Trump's 312-vote victory total. Unlike the contentious 2020 certification process, no Democratic lawmakers objected. Trump decisively won both the popular vote and key swing states, defeating Harris, who had replaced Biden as the Democratic nominee after his withdrawal. The 2024 certification was designated a national special security event, reflecting lessons learned from the violent 2021 attack. That event, which left numerous police officers injured and one dead shortly after, remains a symbol of threats to democracy. Trump, now reelected, has vowed to pardon those convicted in the 2021 Capitol attack, describing them as patriots. And with that, and as always, I thank you so much for listening to Minimum Competence, your daily news podcast for lawyers. So if you're looking for more than Minimum Competence, links to further reading on all the topics touched on today are in the show notes. Reviews go a long way towards helping new listeners to find our show. If you have a moment and can leave a rating or review on your podcast player, we'd sure appreciate it. And if you know someone that might be interested in the story we cover, consider sending them the episode. But remember, nothing here should be construed as legal advice because it is certainly not that. Minimum Competence is available at minimumcomp.com and wherever it is you get your finely crafted podcasts. If you haven't checked out the website in a while, give it a look. There are complete transcripts and resources for each episode and its corresponding segments, as well as an opportunity to receive new episodes in email, newsletter, form. We'll see you back here tomorrow, and until then, remember, the idea of justice often involves a balance between liberty and equality, but the law does not guarantee this balance.